Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. So you know this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So today we are going to be covering the interview that Tucker Carlson had with an interim former interim president of Israel, and it just it gave us an insight into the minds of the Israelis, how they think, how they function, and it was very eye-opening because it just showed that the Israeli society is full of delusions, both delusions of grandeur and delusions of paranoia. It just shows a society that it's not a normal society. It's a broken society because because of all the things that he constantly does and because of the things that he constantly feels is going to be done to it. So this interview, this man was, and there's something about these Israelis. I think that they are very honest about who they are. They're honest about what they want. They're honest about their behavior. It's probably other parts of the world that is running interference for them, especially in the US, or trying to cast them in a certain light. They don't really care about those appearances. They only care about winning, being at the top, survival. That's the only thing they care about, and they'll do that at any cost. They'll do that at any cost. Whatever it takes for them to get what they want, they're going to do that. So I'm going to be covering Tucker Carlson's interview with him and just share my thoughts as we go. So let's begin.
Vrumberg, thank you very much for doing this. I want to ask you about something that's happening right now, apparently. So the President of the United States issued a statement this morning saying that because of ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, the U.S. would not actually commence with hitting civilian infrastructure as he promised, and that we're going to try and work something out diplomatically this week. Almost immediately after issuing that statement, there were reports that the Israeli military was hitting civilian infrastructure in Iran. Assuming that's true, what do you make of that? What strategy does that suggest?
First of all, it suggests the fact that the US has absolutely no control over what happens in this conflict, that it is Israel that is leading the charge, and the US is just blindly following. It's a case of the tail wagging the dog, because whatever is going to happen, the Israeli government constantly defies the US government, makes them look stupid and foolish in front of the world. The US president has come out to say, we're going to cease hostilities, but Israel just continues. I think the Israeli prime minister actually came out to say, well, it's not up to the US to determine when this war ends. What does that tell you?
The same strategy that Israel has for years, no strategy. In Israel, in many, many cases, the compilation of many tactics sometimes assemble into a de facto strategy, but otherwise nothing. I mean, just look at the last 2 hours. When was the announcement of the president? The surprising one 2 hours ago. And you have a bundle of messages coming from all directions. The first and the most important one, hallelujah, they're going to renew the flights so we can go for Passover vacation. That's the immediate reaction of many Israelis, my daughter included.
So this is consistent because when you look at the Israelis, it absolutely makes no sense why they would attack Iran again, less than 7 months after their initial attack, when they were being pounded, when they themselves begged for a ceasefire. It makes absolutely no sense. There is no strategy behind this. They're just in a constant state of aggression, a constant state of warfare. That's it. There is no goal in sight. There is no goal in mind. If you look at the bigger picture of what Israel wants to achieve, wants to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, wants to even ethnically cleanse other other Arab nations, its neighbors, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, even to Egypt. How do you live like that? Where is the strategy in that? Just constant warfare, warfare, warfare.
The second is, Netanyahu knew altogether. I mean, Netanyahu is behind the move, as if framing it as his own move. And then, Trump, he is so softy, he's so weak, he doesn't have any resilience. The Iranians, they trick him, etc., etc., etc. Bottom line is nobody has a clue. And in this chaos, the military does what it does the best, simply hammer the nail.
But you're suggesting that those tactics, the one we're seeing today and the ones we've seen for the last month, don't add up to a strategy? There's no strategic goal in mind?
I listened to you very carefully in the last couple of weeks, and the way you try to conceive the Israeli strategy from Netanyahu's 40 years life mission to the greater land of Israel, biblically speaking, or messianic eschatological one. And I envy you that you really believe that we have something like that. Okay? It doesn't work that way. I mean, in a way that, let's start somewhere else. I mean, somebody once told me that what's the difference between an Israeli and an American?
Hey, wait, I need you to show me how to convert a Word doc to a PDF again.
Seriously?
Among many differences is that we Israelis, we see an aim, so we aim and we shoot. You Americans, you see an aim, so you take an aim and aim and aim and aim and aim. You are a lot about process, and we are a lot about, yalla, let's shoot it. And there is a difference here. I have no idea.
So this is the first insight into the Israeli mind, which means that these people are not contemplative of any actions that they are going to take. They just want to shoot at a hip. They want to shoot first and ask questions later. They are not weighing situations, and it's consistent with what you've seen in Gaza. It's consistent with what you see in their military actions and military campaign. They don't care who gets killed. In fact, Israelis have gotten killed. Remember those three Israeli captives who escaped Hamas's captivity and were shot by Israeli snipers because their policy was kill everything. Anything that moves, just kill it. That's all they know how to do, kill. And Abraham is making reference to that. And he's correct.
What's the American strategy? I do not know what was the end game. I have no idea what is the final design the architects of the White House or the Washington really had in mind. I can tell you one thing for sure. Israel wants to remove the Iranian monster because part of it is a real threat, and part of it because we pumped it to the size of a monster. So we are fighting, in a way, a real demon and a demon which is our own creation. So what we want to do is, we don't like the war, we want it to end, we don't like the missiles, we hate the sirens, we skip nights after nights of sleeping, but once we are into it, let's make sure that it's over. So the real will of many Israelis is, let's get over with the Iranians.
How delusional can you be to think that you can get it over with 90 million people, a country of 10 million people? How does that happen without any real overtures to peace, without any framework for coming to a peaceful resolution of the conflict, without a substantive answer to the Palestinian question? How do you get it over with? What manner of hubris makes a very tiny country of 10 million people think that it can take on and get it over with a country of that is 10 times its population and many times its geographical size, that he can get it over with them militarily, not by negotiations, not by coming to some sort of peace agreement, just by force. You're going to kill 90 million Iranians? Is that what you're going to do?
The problem is the relative size. Israel is a small country. Iran is a large country. How exactly do Israelis expect that's going to happen?
Size-wise and number-wise, we are, let's say, 10 million in a good day, and there are 100 million in an average day. In a way, many Israelis do not really measure it this way. Many Israelis believe that we are a kind of a superpower. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a high school somewhere, and I promoted my good old no goodnik peace agenda, okay? And one of the students stood up and said, Avram, can I ask you a question? I said, yes, please do. And he said, why won't we do to them what we did to them in Afghanistan? And I said, I know Gaza, I know Lebanon, I know Syria, I know Egypt. What did we do to whom in Afghanistan?
These guys are already in the future. They're already attacking Afghanistan in the future. You see the level of delusion?
I mean, we haven't been there yet. And I asked him, where are you from originally? And he said, I was born in Moscow. And I said to myself, haha, he thinks like a Russian. And I asked him, tell me, how many Jews are there in the world? Now, Tucker, with no hesitation, he said, 54.3.
More delusions.
Okay. And how many Israelis are we? He said something like 20 million.
More
In the
delusions.
eyes of many Israelis, we're not just superpower technologically and superpower economically and a regional hegemon politically. We have.
This is the kind of hubris that gets people killed. These delusions of grandeur, it's what gets people killed. It's like they are infected by a virus that just makes them act rapidly, unafraid of anything. Remember, there's this parasite that infects mice that makes them unafraid of rats because somehow the parasite needs a cat. The parasite needs to be in a cat to complete its life cycle. So it just takes a hold of the rat's brain and basically let it offer itself to the cat. And that is exactly what is happening here.
The numbers in economy, the numbers in support, the numbers in demography, without really calculating what are the real numbers. So when you ask the Israelis how, simply do it.
And what will the end victory look like from an Israeli perspective? How will Israelis know they've won?
For just $37, you can generate as many videos as you want and never have to worry about.
I don't have a good answer for this question. In a sense that in many cases, the American or the Western way of thinking is usually a kind of a win-win. I mean, we end a war and we make sure that we left at the other side somebody to talk with. I mean, yes, it is ridiculous that the American president is saying, I would like to talk with somebody, but there is nobody there because I killed him. Okay, this is your own oxymoron. This
Yes.
is a paradox that I take it you intellectually, you know how to square this circle, okay? But from the Israeli point of view, in many, many cases, philosophically, no, psychologically, we do not live in a win-win situation. We live in a zero-sum game. If there is a competition, if there is a race, if there is a war, if there is a battle, if there is a conflict that ends up that Tucker and Avrum profits, something is wrong with me. I want to win alone.
Imagine that sort of mentality. You want to win alone. You want to be at the top. You want to destroy everything that is not you. Is this not indicative of a very sick society? I mean, we can, bloviate about the extremism in Islamic countries for all we can or all we want. But despite that, I don't think you find this level of pathology. It is there, right? It is there. I'm not going to deny that. But the Israelis aren't any better in any sense. In some sense, they're worse. Because it's a society that's totally captured, totally deluded themselves into this way of thinking that you have to win at all costs. There is no conceivable way in which you can coexist with another group where both of you somehow win. It's inconceivable.
I want you to be dead. I want to humiliate you. I want to cancel you. Whomever you are, my enemy. And when you look at this philosophy, you understand where comes the political rhetoric that every adversary, never mind who is he, minor or major, by the end of the day, he is a Hitler. And every decade we have a new Adolf Hitler. And since everybody is the arch enemy, there is only one solution to this one enemy: removal. And therefore, when you ask me what is the Israeli political echelon, forget about the people in the street. The political echelon approach toward any kind of resolution, whatever it is, it's not a dialogist one. Now, it is not just about Netanyahu, which is a case by himself. When you look at what is allegedly called opposition in Israel, they simply compete with the government, who is more aggressive, who is more as if resilient, who has more so-called creative solution.
So many people in the West will think when they are being critical of Israel, they will try to make the distinction that, oh, it's Netanyahu who is the problem, he's the radical, he's the one that, nah. The leaders are often reflective of a country, except in cases where it's a dictatorship. Most of the time, when you have democratic institutions where people are able to vote in their leaders, the leaders are indicative and reflective of the population. So, Netanyahu isn't an aberration, he's the norm in Israel. That's the Israelis, that's who they are. This is who they are. Imagine with all that's happened, this guy is still in power because they want him to be in power. There was a time I saw a video where they were singing, hailing Netanyahu as the king of Israel. Imagine that.
To the enemy, we have to demolish and obliterate. And this is why you hardly find in Israel any reconciliatory politics.
So we're still in the middle of Lent, inching closer and closer to Holy Week, the days leading up to Easter. Recommend. Where does this attitude come from?
When I was in school, in high school, every other week, the rabbi, I was in a religious high school, in a religious academy, yeshiva. So the rabbi used to call my mom. My father was busy, so he used to call my mom and said, "You have a very, very talented boy, child. He's like an egg. The more I boil him, the harder he becomes." Now, in a way, our life experience as Jews in the last couple of thousands of years and Israelis in the last couple of decades boiled us into a very, very hard, stiff-neck egg. On one hand, we never trusted hands offered to us. And on the other hand, we never experienced to extend our own hands.
So mic check. Luke Bovine is saying my mic is muffled. I don't know what's going on, but just let me know if it's better now. If not, maybe I'll just manage it like that. But thank you.
I'll give you two examples. The rhetorics of Israel since 48 is a rhetorics of survival, of existential threats, of permanent, imminent war. Out of nowhere came President Sadat to Israel. I remember myself as a young soldier at 73 war, at the other side of the Suez Canal, in a foxhole in the desert, in the middle of the night, like a frightened 18 years old boy. And I was listening to the Dan iPhone transistor. Do you remember the transistor with the rusty voice?
Oh, yeah.
And I heard President Sadat in the middle of the night say, I'm ready to sacrifice 1.5 million Egyptian soldiers in order to redeem the Sinai Peninsula. And I said, holy God, 1.5 million Egyptian soldiers against me, Avraham Bug, a Jew boy from Jerusalem? I was frightened to death. And then 4 years later, he came to Jerusalem, and I'm running. Now I'm a released paratrooper officer, young one, running after his convoy and chant, no more war, no more bloodshed. It was redemption. It was eschatological. It was messianic. It was the first time Israel was offered a different syntax, from a syntax of war to a grammar of peace. We never grew up into the challenge of Sadat. Never.
Step 1. Determine which work permit you need. Canada has 2 types of work permits.
But the truth is that, peace works both ways. It can't be in one direction, right? If you want peace with your neighbors, then you have to be able to offer peace as well. But when you're not offering anything, you're not offering any peace, don't expect your neighbors to give you peace as well. So what efforts has Israel made in terms of trying to create peace with its neighbors? I don't think he's done really much in that regard.
We never walked all the way with the Egyptians, with the Palestinians, as was part of the original Camp David framework. And we rejected it. Even when a couple of years later, Oslo, Deus ex machina, out of nowhere, Oslo came to the world. As problematic as now we know de facto that Oslo was at the time, when it was launched, it was an eruption of hope. It was again an offer for a different language. We didn't grow into it. So Israel does not have a vocabulary or state of mind to talk peace. Now, there is a different layer that I'm not at all sure it's too early in the
How can a society exist that doesn't have a vocabulary for peace, a template for peace, an understanding of what peace is? Again, delusional, fundamentally broken. For you not to have the concept of peace, for you all to always be in a constant state of warfare, there is a big problem.
Conversation between us, but this is the transformation from eternal Judaism that was a religion of powerlessness. And if I would like to use Václav Havel terminology, we had the power of powerlessness, and we transformed into Israelis with the power of the Almighty, and we feel much more threatened.
So when you were powerless, you felt threatened. Now that you're powerful, you still feel threatened. So what exactly is going to make you feel safe? Nothing until all your enemies are vanquished, all your enemies are gone and dead, hundreds of millions of them. That's the only thing that will make you feel safe as an Israeli.
Well, there's a paradox. So as Israel has become more objectively powerful, it has felt more threatened, more endangered.
Yeah.
It does seem like, if you were to, just as an outsider, it does seem like Israel is more threatened. And it does seem like if it had continued on the trajectory from the Sadat talks or from Oslo in the way that you suggest, it would be less threatened. I think objectively that's probably true.
Or maybe both. Maybe at the same time, we have opportunities and the threats are better threats, so to say. Let's look at numbers just for a second. When I was a student, at elementary school, a pupil, we were taught that in 48, the year in which the state of Israel was born, 7 Arab armies invaded the just born state of Israel. So 48, it was 7 versus 1. In 67, 19 years later, it was only 3 out of the 7, Jordan, Egypt, and Syria. 6 years later, in 73, it was only 2 out of the three, only Syria and Egypt. Ever since, as broken as it is and as chilly as it is, with Egypt, we have a peace agreement. And Syria, in a very good day, is a dysfunctioning threat. So you can, and the Palestinian issue that was not there in 48 the way it is today was born along the road. So you can say, listen, in 8 decades, 48 to 26, from 7 armies to half a problem, which is the Palestinian one, this is an evolution. This is a positive progress. And in a way it is. And this is before we count in the potential of Saudi Arabia, the potential of the Emirates, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, 2 elements emerged as well. The first is Israel that at least in 3 stages in its life was fully accepted in among the family of nations. 48 and its euphoria, 67 and the eruption of redemptive feelings all over the world maybe, and the atrocities of October 7th, 23. 3 times that Israel in conflict time, this is beside Camp David, beside Oslo, beside other positive peace agreements, but in a conflict situation, that Israel was well received and well accepted in the world. And then we must ask ourselves, how was it wasted? How comes that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Israel, 3 years ago in 23, Israel was so well sympathized with all over the world and now so despised?
Correct. I mean, very, very, very correct. Myself inclusive. I don't think this is what.
So the threat of being rejected, of being a world pariah, maybe it's not a military one, but it's a deeper one. It's an existential one. And the other is assuming that the Iranians would have had a nuclear capability that very soon will lead to a chain of reactions that others will have nuclear.
I think what I was saying while my mic was muted is the fact that there was no country that I respected and admired more than Israel, and no people that I respected more than the Jewish people. I mean, I looked at their history and I said, these are people that have gone through a lot and they've survived, they've thrived, they've succeeded despite their history, despite all the horrible things that they've gone through. And I used to chide African Americans to say, why can't you be like the Jews, right? They've succeeded despite all they've been through. So there was this positive goodwill. There was this immense goodwill that Israel had all over the world, not just me, a whole lot of people had this goodwill about Israel. But it lost it all. There was no country that I respected the most But at this point in time, there is no country that I despise more than Israel, because it doesn't respect life, it doesn't respect international law, it acts unhinged, it does things without recourse to consequences. It's a profoundly sick and maniacal society. So how do you deal with such a society? And it pains me because, I mean, on a normal day, I shouldn't be sympathetic to the other side on a normal day. I shouldn't be. But the actions of the Israeli government and the Israeli society are so reprehensible that in comparison to the other side, they are way worse, much, much worse.
Weapons in the Middle East without using the weapons, but a Middle East with mass destruction weapons.
So what made you build an app?
I'm Bigfoot. Got tired of being a myth, so I built an app for men who scream into rivers after cold plunges.
Is a different.
But that's where the Middle East is going to end up going to, because with this constant aggression against Iran, you're going to push them to do the unthinkable, to acquire a nuclear weapon. And I have absolutely no idea why the Iranians haven't gotten that at this point in time. I have absolutely no idea. With this constant aggression, with this constant attack, Israel is not going, they're never going to stop harassing Iran. It's not possible. They're not going to stop. So this is the only way you guarantee your safety. They have nuclear weapons. The other day, an Israeli official on Piers Morgan basically said so. And he said that he doesn't understand why the Israeli government is having this policy of ambiguity about it, that if it were up to him, he'll just declare, yeah, we have it. So what? What can you do about it?
Scale of a threat for many, but for Israel especially. So I will say, yes, we have better relationship with many. And the situation is not 48, is not 67, is not even 23. But the threats are not gone. They were transformed and different and require different strategy and philosophy and value system to address.
Inflation makes credit card statements particularly scary. You work 40, 50. How did this war start?
How did, sorry?
This current war, this month-old war against Iran, there's a debate in the United States about how it started, whether or not the United States was pursuing its own interest, defending itself from Iran, or whether President Trump followed the lead of Prime Minister Netanyahu. What's your view?
If we go back to your initial introduction or your immediate question you bombarded me with without any introduction, okay? You said, we have no clue what's going on. So we do not know, we don't yet have information, neither about the launching of the campaign, nor about the continuation of it. So in a world with no information, in a realm of no information between me and you, we can look at the gestalt, we can look at the frameworks of what happened, the details Tetris-like will fall in. And I will say the immediate trigger was an awful one. We had an opportunity. Since when you declare a war because there is an opportunity? I mean, that's the worst opportunistic reason I've ever heard in my life. My father was a very wise man. He used to say about one of his colleagues, that's a man of principles. Principle number one, opportunism. I said,
imagine more revelation into the sick mind of the Israelis.
What kind of a principle is this one to declare such a world war in a volatile reality that China is out there waiting for something and Russia and Ukraine is ambushing us, and now you have to have another front? So the immediate trigger that we had an opportunity, I will say, whatever was the opportunity, using it was an unjust, immoral trigger.
Yeah, and the opportunity was Donald Trump, because they found a US president that was gullible, stupid enough to back them in this sort of aggression. That's the opportunity. Netanyahu himself said it. He's been dreaming, he's been having wet dreams about this for 40 years. Now he's finally arrived. It's that's the opportunity. And like Avram is saying, what sort of principle is that? It's parasitic.
The larger frame is Netanyahu's life mission. I take it that it requires more than one Tucker Carlson and more than 2 hours between you and me, or 5 hours, or as long as we can tolerate each other in order to understand this figure. He's a very, very interesting individual and a very, very significant leader of a state in this time. Significant, I hope it's natural enough, because I don't have much of sympathy to his leadership. However, he's there, he's significant. Where his life mission is coming from, and I will say that it has two drivers. One is very Jewish and one is very conservative. The very Jewish is, in a way, like my mom. My mom believed that the world is divided 50-50. 50% Jews and 50% to hate the Jews, which means she believed we are something like 3.5 billion people with the Jews, okay? And the rest of you, whomever you are, do not like us.
Imagine that kind of mentality. Imagine the delusions. Thinking that you are like half of the world and that the other half of the world hates you.
So this notion that the entire world is against us and you cannot trust nobody but ourselves is embedded in the Jewish conscience ever since. Maybe even since the Bible, since biblical time, but for sure later on in the exilic period instilled it into our psyches. So we do not trust, and therefore we're not being trusted in a way. There is a dialogue of not trusting here.
Exactly. I mean, you get what you give. If you are an untrustworthy person, if you are suspicious of everything, you give off that vibe and that energy, people are not going to trust you. It's just the way it works.
So Netanyahu is part of this classic Jewish paranoia. The entire world is against us. At the same time,
eternal victimhood. Like how do you feel comfortable being the victim all the time, playing the victim? Even when you are in power, you still feel like the victim. It's like there's something substantive to it. Like there's something they get out of it, being the victim. It's like it's the only thing that is holding Israeli society together. It's the cohesion, the sense of victimhood. Everyone hates us, so we have to be aggressive. We have to be as crazy as possible to keep everybody at bay. To saying that offense is the best form of defense. That's the principle that Israel is operating on.
He's a very kind of a 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s conservative in your hobby neocon. To say we are the children of light and that all of those offsprings of darkness, and our life mission is to push them back. Our life mission is to fight them. Is never compromise, never realize if there is somebody out there that we can communicate with.
So this goes back to religious extremism. People would always say that the Muslims are religious extremists, and sure, they are. There are a lot of Muslims who are religious extremists. But in the case of Israel, it is particularly profoundly self-evident. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, to the extent to which it has a religious component, is even much more evident in the Israeli case, because the Israelis are absolutely convinced that God gave them the land and that it is theirs by right, given to them by God, even though they came from different places, from Russia, from Ukraine, from the Middle East, from North Africa, from Iran, from different places. They're absolutely convinced that God gave them that land. Now, that's a religious claim. I'm a religious person, but I don't expect everybody or anybody to respect that religious claim. I don't expect anybody to respect that. So you've got to come with something much more substantive. So the religious fundamentalism in Israeli society is off the charts.
Maybe they are not a monolithic group of people. Maybe like us, that are divided, that are dissected. That there is the diversion, there is a richness of expressions in ideologies and values and religious manifestation. No. They are all of them. And when you listen to Netanyahu, Huntington through Netanyahu, he is the leader of our civilization of light versus whomever is the civilization of darkness. So his built-in classic Jewish paranoia that many Jews have, some of it rightly so, some of it molded into it. And part of it is part of a worldview that you know better than I do, because you explore it almost a couple of times a week. And this is the mistrusting Christian West who does not trust anybody but itself. And when you look at some of their attitude towards...
You're not eating onions wrong. You're destroying them before they help you.
Europe itself does not even trust itself. So where this war started, it started with an opportunity and a frame of mind.
How do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu sees President Trump?
He's afraid of him.
Really? Isn't it the other way around? Isn't it that Trump is afraid of Netanyahu?
Because he's unexpected. I don't know if the term whimsical is the right one, but it's unexpected. I believe the more I monitor the actions of the president, that there is a kind of a worldview behind it. Not always articulated de jure, but de facto I can realize some things there. So first, Netanyahu is fearful of the unexpected. The second, Netanyahu is so talented that he took the disadvantage and made it his prime advantage how to puppeteer the president.
It doesn't really take much to puppeteer Trump. It just takes a good dose of ego stroking and possibly some Epstein files, and you get him to do whatever you want him to do.
So I would say he has a dual feeling, a fear and a know-how to use this fear for his advantage. Now look at the pattern. How many American presidents saw Israeli prime ministers as their elder brothers? Like Clinton and Rabin, George W. Bush and Ehud Olmert, maybe not elder brother, but an experienced one, Golda Meir and Nixon. So there is there a kind of older-younger brother relationship between Israeli prime ministers and American presidents that Netanyahu, with his vast experience and malicious intentions, knows how to use also this leverage point in order to promote his agenda with this American president.
How do you think he did it? What were the leverage points?
I heard you with this, how you call him, the prophet? The Canadian prophet this weekend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's interesting.
I'll tell you something very funny in a second, if I may.
Please.
He came with four theories how it
Yes.
happened. I'll tell you something very, very simple. It's a chemistry between two charmers. Listen, Tucker, I cannot stand you. But you're a nice person, so I talk with you. Okay? I mean, you know,
I'll
you
take
know
that as
my
a half
ideology.
compliment. Yes.
Of course. I mean, no, I mean, it's a 1.5. And you know my position, and despite or in spite my positions, we're talking.
Yes.
So there is something there at the very personal chemistry that simply worked. And Netanyahu.
I just love Israeli honesty. It's so refreshing. Saying to Tucker, I cannot stand you. Beautiful. Most people having conversations with Tucker would skirt around that. I can't stand Tucker as well. I don't think he's a good person. I think he's a very bad man. But, you know, like I said yesterday, on this issue, he's correct. He's right. His motivations might be suspect. I have no idea why he's doing all this. It might be from some genuine place. It might be because he's anti-Semitic, because Tucker definitely is a racist. And there's not a very big gap between being a racist and being anti-Semitic. But he's right. He's right. Despite his motivations, he's right. So yeah, this guy saying he can't stand Tucker Carlson is something I can understand.
Is a brilliant campaigner. Listen, when you walk out of the room with Netanyahu, check your sleeves whether you have your hands into them still. Maybe he stole your hands out of your sleeves. This is how talented he is. He picked his pockets. And so did Trump to him. They use each other.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand half of that explanation, but I don't understand what President Trump or the United States could conceivably gain from this. It seems like 100% loss to me.
Vanity is what he gains from it. His ego being stroked is what he gains from it. The Epstein files not being released to implicate him in a much more damning manner is what he gains from it. But I really don't think it's the Epstein files, because there are things already there that could take him down, and it's obviously having no effect. It's the ego stroking. Ego stroking. Netanyahu knows how to harass Trump's ego, and that's what he's doing. Trump is just a vain man.
It's more a question to you as an American than a question to me as far away a subject of the American empire or the American influence zone, okay?
Yes.
I'm sure that there is a profit here. Now, is the profit, for example, a place in history? As much as
the only place that Trump gets in history is being the worst president the US has ever had and will ever have. I can bet money on that. I don't think there'd be a president as bad as Trump ever, ever.
Many authoritarian leaders, since
I am busy enough, and my boss thinks I can handle training a new hire.
You obviously haven't heard of Scribe, have you?
They do not trust their people to commemorate them after they pass away. So they commemorate themselves while still alive. Make sure that there are libraries on them, and cultural centers, and bridges, and airports.
It goes back to the point I say about Trump's vanity. He's just a vain person.
And you name it, okay? Still, history plays a role. And when you think of Trump coming from Manhattan, with so many Jewish associations around him, he's familiar to the Jewish talk of New York. He's familiar to the rhetorics of Jews and their association and affiliation with Israel. He understands that many of them sees Israel under a permanent threat of extinction. Saving Israel before the base, before the Christian Zionists, saving Israel is, historically speaking, is almost prophetic. Listen to his rhetorics after Gaza. I put an end to 3,000 years of a conflict. I don't know when the counting began.
Yeah. Yeah. Trump is just as deluded as these Israelis.
And still counting. Okay. Nonetheless, it's a state of mind. It's politics and history mixed. And Netanyahu, as a child, as a son of an historian, understands this how to play this card.
So you believe it's likely Netanyahu said to Trump, "You will be recorded by history as the man who saved the Jews"?
This is on the positive side, and on the negative side is you do not want to be recorded as the one that under his God and in his shift, something so awful like the second Holocaust happened to the Jews. There are two sides to this moon.
Yes.
The dark one and the one a bit more illuminated. Publicly, you speak about the lit side of the moon. I mean, in dark rooms, you speak about the dark side.
Yes.
We are under permanent threat. Save us.
This is just profoundly dishonest. This is just profoundly, it's bone chilling. The level of deception, the level of that Israel would go through to achieve its aims. It speaks to a fundamentally broken society. And Avram is just spilling it all, is just revealing everything for everyone to see. It's amazing. It's crazy. It's inconceivable that such a tiny country would have such an oversized influence on the world, and especially on the US, and push them to do unthinkable things. Mass psychosis.
You said a minute ago that what the Israeli government has done in Gaza has permanently, or at least for the moment, made Israel into a pariah state internationally. How is Gaza seen within Israel?
In order to touch such a volatile issue, I need a very brief introduction to offer you my own framing of this last couple of years.
Yes.
Whatever Israel did to the Palestinians since day 100 years ago, all the wrongdoings, the transfer, the expel, the demolition of 400-500 communities, the Nakba, the tragedy, the catastrophe of the Palestinians, whatever we done to them, all wrongdoings does not justify the first step and the first step towards atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th.
I agree.
None.
Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees on that point. I mean, whatever the Israelis have done does not justify murdering civilians. If it was the IDF that they targeted like that, the militaries kill and get killed. Not my problem. But the fact that you target civilians is a problem. So yes, every sane, rational human being agrees with this point.
Right.
And whatever Hamas did on October 7th to the Israelis, brutal, awful crimes against humanity in the bodies of my friends and my colleagues and my fellow citizens, whatever the Hamas did to us does not justify the moral crimes and maybe even crimes against humanity that Israel exercises in Gaza ever since.
Finally find an Israeli that I can tolerate and actually like. Well, I'm not surprised because no people are a monolith, and not extending that grace to Israelis would be a disservice to honesty, intellectual honesty. So yeah, it is possible to have Israelis who think like this, despite the fact that most of the country is just pathological.
You have two crime scenes, do not annihilate each other, do not balance each other, do not justify each other.
Exactly.
The time.
Two wrongs do not make a right.
You have to deal with Hamas crimes and with the Israeli crimes simultaneously, as difficult as it is, and sometimes as paradoxically as it is. Now, this is how I see it. Most of Israelis are not in my place. Most of Israelis, regardless of October 7th, I mean, even much before October 7th, do not really know where Gaza is. Yes, it might be 5 minutes away from a doorstep, might be 40 minutes drive from Tel Aviv, but it's beyond the mountains of darkness. I don't know where is it. I haven't been.
So for them, it's beyond the wall where the wildlands are.
In there, ever.
That shows just how dehumanizing what they've done to the Palestinians. They just see them as not humans.
When you look at the Israeli media, up until October 7th and 10 times more after October 7th, you never see Gazian people. You see tunnels, you see cement, you see rockets, you see demolitions, you see Hamas troops running here and there. You never see the individual Gazian people, as if there are no people there. And the report is never about the humanitarian side of it. The report is always about insurgencies, terrorists, etc. Gaza, as they awfully expressed by my President Herzog, said, in Gaza there are no innocent people. God forbid to live in such a situation that you do not believe there are no innocent people on the other side. Even Abraham the Patriarch believed that in Sodom and Gomorrah, there are innocent people, and God negotiated with him. But we are better than God, and we are worse than Abraham, we simply write off any innocence in Gaza. And ever since, it did not improve.
So this man is just confirming what we already know about Israeli society, about the pathology of that society. He's just simply confirming it. There's nothing to hide here. To just think that everyone on the other side is guilty, collective guilt. How different are they from Hamas, who attacked Israeli civilians based on what the Israeli state has done to the Palestinians? They're not different. So, when Israel likes to cast itself as a society that is different, I mean, Israel is a perfect Middle Eastern country. It sits and fits within the culture of the Middle East, in the violent, extremist, fundamentalist culture of the Middle East. That is what it is. There is no democracy in the Middle East. There is no human rights. There's none of that, both in the Arab Muslim states and even in Israel itself. The only difference is that the Muslim states do not delude themselves into believing that they are democracies. They accept themselves for what they are. But the Israelis are the ones that are deluding themselves to thinking that they are a democracy. They are not.
So in a way, Gaza, it's not a blind spot. Blind spot it's too technical. Gaza is the moral abyss in which Israel collapsed into.
I find it so striking what you just said, because Israel is such an international country. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the population was born somewhere else, and people are always in and out of Israel. I mean, it's not Central Africa. It's right in the Mediterranean. It's very international, as I said. So it's interesting that many Israelis don't have a sense of what's happening just right at their southern border. What do they think when they read about it? There's so much international controversy about it. When you pull up the internet, someone's getting mad about Gaza. How do Israelis respond to that?
You put here two topics. The first is media report.
Yes.
Media, and the second one is, where is the existential reality of Israelis? Whom are we? When she asked you, the Economist editor, the right to exist, and you exploded. What is that right to exist, okay? And I said to myself, Tucker, don't get mad at her. The question is a different one.
This AI tool will create a stunning ebook direct from your content, whether it's a Microsoft Word document.
The right to exist from the point of view of being a Jew, not from being part of the international community. Is Israel justified according to the norms it tells itself it is? The only democracy in the Middle East, the most moral army in the world, etc., etc. There, it implodes.
The most moral army in the world, where Netanyahu was basically praising Genghis Khan, a genocidal maniac. And it's consistent over Jesus Christ, over a peace-loving savior of the world. He's saying Christ had no advantage over Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan that killed millions of people, raped its way across a large swath of the world. That is what Netanyahu wants to model himself and his society after. And then they claim to be the most moral army in the world. Yeah.
Now, let me try to answer your question. First, about the international reports. Most of us listen to Hebrew media only and read Hebrew media only. And the Hebrew media filters most of the non-Hebrew expressions. We do not speak English. I mean, even listen to me with my Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, okay? I mean, we don't speak English. On parle pas français. Okay, we don't speak German. And if we read something about it, they're all anti-Semites. And the weaponizing of anti-Semitism into a kind of a thick filter that enables us to reject any kind of legitimate criticism.
This is the most honest Israeli I have had the pleasure of listening to.
Is part of the system here.
And this is the problem that I and many people have with Israel. The fact that you weaponize something like anti-Semitism is it's just so unnerving. It's so blatantly dishonest that I can't stand it. Every dislike I have of Israel is of its own making. I shouldn't have those feelings about Israel, but Israel left me no choice with its actions.
So media-wise, we hardly hear the international situation. Hardly hear it. The question of what does that mean to us, I will say as follows. Up until the Second World War, 90% of the Jews in the world were Christian-born Jews, what we call Ashkenazim.
Yes.
And 10% were born in the Muslim sphere, what we call Sfaradim. So it was 90% Christian world Jews and 10% Muslim world Jews. Today in Israel, it is 50-50, which means the old perception that Israel is an offspring of the West, of the Christendom, demographically doesn't work. Because at least half of the Jewish Israelis, not to talk about the 20% of Palestinians with Israeli idea, but from the 80% Jews, 50% were born or offsprings of Muslim world Jewry, which do not share the same legacy and the same heritage and the same tradition that Jews shared with you, which is the evolution of the West. I'll take it a step further. Yes, many of us were born in so many other places, or our parents or grandparents. But most of us were born here. And here is a very strange place. On one hand, we're not Europe anymore because we got disconnected. And on the other hand, we never got connected to the region. So we are kind of a standalone island, totally disconnected from the region, refusing to get connected. When normalization was offered to us only 2-3 years ago, it was a threat. We never dwelled into the strategy, what should be our relationship with the region? So much so that in a way, we resemble a lot the kingdom of Jerusalem of the Crusades. Foreigners coming from the outside, circling ourselves with a kind of a self-siege wars and never integrate. It is not right, because there were interaction between the regional Muslims at the time and the Christians at the time. But nonetheless, the kingdom as a political entity never wanted to be part of the region. After 200 years, it expired. The state of Israel, born out of the ashes of the Holocaust, for sure, but earlier on was born out of the nation-state idea of getting secular Europe with its solutions to its national groupings, came to the Middle East, which is not part of the nation-state thinking, didn't go through the processes of secularization and revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the British Revolution, never went through them in order to get where we are today, and therefore didn't find any hooks to get connected.
And this man is spot on. I mean, the Israeli project is a European project. It was born out of the nationalistic fervor that was finding its way as a rave throughout Europe at that time. Different ethnic groups were clamoring for their own nation states. And yeah, Theodor Herzl, the spiritual founder of Israel, was like, well, if the Germans can have a state and the French can have a state, why can't the Jews? That was it. That was a principal driving factor. Of course, the anti-Semitism was there, the attacks against Jews was there, but that was a huge part of it. It was both a colonial endeavor, just as Europe was having at that point in time its colonial expansion, and a nationalistic one.
So we lost our Western hinterland, and we never seeded enough in order to grow to be part of the local fauna.
And no wonder the Israelis don't care about destroying the Middle East, because they're not really connected to it. That's why they treat it as a theater of war, of destruction, of carnage. That's why, despite what's happening right now, they see no reason to reduce their attacks on Iran, despite the fact that Iran is just hitting everywhere in the Middle East. They want it all. They want it all in flames. And this is what happens when you are dealing with someone else's property. You're not as careful with it as you would be when it's yours.
So we are isolated.
I think many, I don't know what they think now, but for most of my life in the US, many Americans regarded Israel as a kind of European-ish country. That was always my opinion. Some of them felt that Israel was almost part of the United States, not in a sinister way, but we've got so much in common. 51st state. Golda Meir, I think, was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
She grew up in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, right? Okay.
As they used to say at the time, the woman who made Milwaukee famous.
Right. She smoked Chesterfield cigarettes, American cigarettes. I mean, it felt very American. What is the view, would you say, of most Israelis now toward the United States?
We love it. We admire it. We want to move there. And we think you are so childish and naive.
Why?
Because this is what you are.
Okay, I think I've had enough of this, right? And I think that the man made some very, very good points, some very, very valid points. And what he's revealed is consistent with the Israeli worldview, with the way the Israelis have carried themselves throughout, with the way they wage war, with the way they relate with their neighbors, not wanting peace, not wanting to find common ground with their neighbors, but to always be in a constant state of aggression and warfare. It's apocalyptic. It's it's not good. You can't sustain, it's not possible. You can't sustain this forever. You can't sustain always being aggressive forever. You're going to tire yourself out. And then you're going to meet an enemy that has really nothing to lose, and they're just going to go all in, and it will be a mutually assured destruction. So for the sake of Israel and for the sake of peace in the Middle East, the Israelis need to really, change the way they do things. They need to do things differently. They need to seek peace. They need to reach out to their neighbors. They need to create a framework. They need to answer the Palestinian question. That cannot keep hanging forever. The Palestinians are not going to be refugees forever. At a certain point in time, that question, they have to deal with it. And the sooner the better. That's the only way that there's going to be peace in the Middle East. And that's the only way the world isn't going to be paying the price for stupid Israeli wars every now and then, as it is currently. So that's what I just wanted to cover today. Thank you for coming, Luke Bubine and others that were able to join the chat today. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in another live stream. So it's bye for now.